T'Vondre Sweat does not fit Robert Saleh's defense, and the Tennessee Titans should be looking to trade him. I'll explain why on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. On today's show, we're going to go through the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to hit every single position and tell you why I think the Tennessee Titans roster will change and what kind of players they should be looking for at each spot. On yesterday's show, we did the offense. Go and check that out. But we're going to start today with the interior defensive line. And again, I know it's controversial, but the Titans should be looking to trade T'Vondre Sweat. Before I tell you why, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. Now it's time to dive into the roster moves, who the Titans should cut, who they should keep, free agency, the draft. You want to stay up to date, entertained, and as informed as a Tennessee Titans fan could possibly be. Make sure that you stay locked in with the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world, Locked On Titans. But with all that being said, I know I can hear the collective eye rolls already, but the Tennessee Titans should be looking to trade T'Vondre Sweat. And before you tell me that I'm insane, I'm crazy, all of that, I want to remind everybody that right before the trade deadline, T'Vondre Sweat's name was discussed as a potential trade option. The Titans were fielding calls on T'Vondre Sweat. That's according to national reporters, local reporters as well. It was well known that the Titans were taking interest from other teams about T'Vondre Sweat's availability. And now that Robert Saleh is here and T'Vondre Sweat does not fit Robert Saleh's defensive scheme, I think that those trade talks could get to a point where a trade actually happens. And look, with Robert Saleh's defensive scheme, what you're looking for is quick, penetrating interior defensive linemen, not these big, hulking, two-gap nose tackles like a T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat is about 360, 370 pounds, okay? And if you're looking for examples of what Robert Saleh has worked with, go through all the defensive tackles that he's had during his time with the Jets, during his time with San Francisco, and quite honestly, the closest ones I can find that are anywhere near T'Vondre Sweat's size is Al Woods, who was 6'4", 310 pounds, and then here recently, the San Francisco 49ers had C.J. West, who's 6'1", 315, and Alfred Collins from Texas, who's 6'3", 230 pounds. That's the closest that you could find an example. And quite frankly, I think those examples tell you why Robert Saleh is not going to be interested in having a guy as big as T'Vondre Sweat on the D-line. C.J. West was awful for San Francisco this year. Alfred Collins was awful for San Francisco this year. And here's the reality, more than just Robert Saleh's scheme, where I don't think that T'Vondre Sweat is a fit because of his play style and his skill set, T'Vondre Sweat, the player himself, has not lived up to the draft pick. He has not been worth the 38th overall pick. Now, he hasn't been a disaster like I tried to say, and I've tried to explain the nuance here. I was wrong about T'Vondre Sweat. He isn't a disaster off the field that's getting in trouble all the time. He isn't a conditioning problem where he can't play multiple snaps a game and play his weight. No, I was wrong about that. But where I was right is he is only a run stuffer. He gives you little to nothing in pass rush, and he is not worth the 38th overall pick in the draft with that being the case. And if you don't believe my opinion, I'll give you the numbers. In 2025, T'Vondre Sweat had a 10.6% win rate in pass rush. That's 73rd in the NFL among interior defensive linemen who played at least 111 snaps. 73rd in pass rush percent win rate. Terrible. That's terrible. 7.6% rate does he get a pressure, a sack, or a hit when he rushes the quarterback. Only 7.6% of the time does he actually make a difference. That's not good. He had 9 total pressure, sacks, and hits combined in 2025. If you want to go off pass rush grade per Pro Football Focus, he was 46th in the NFL amongst interior defensive linemen with a 68 grade. If you go off, true pass rush sets, which are just regular pass rush opportunities, his 7.6% pressure, sack, or hit rate was 51st among interior defensive linemen. His 9 total pressure, sacks, and QB hits combined were 76th. This guy is a non-factor in the pass rush, all right? And in my opinion, if you're just getting a run stuffer, you can get that in undrafted free agency. And I have examples for you there as well. People want to say, oh, well, he's very good against the run. All right, you're right. He was the 4th highest graded interior run defender per Pro Football Focus, again, amongst defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen who played at least 111 snaps. But here is the point. Here are the other people in the top 10 with him. Cam Hayward from the Steelers, who is a great pass rusher as well. Quinnen Williams, who is a great pass rusher as well. Travis Jones from the Baltimore Ravens, who is not a good pass rusher, but he went 76th in the draft, not 38. Poona Ford, undrafted free agent. Harrison Phillips, pick 96. DJ Jones, pick 198. Daniel Onyemata, pick 120. Teair Tart, undrafted free agent. Jalen Redmond, undrafted free agent. The point is he was simply not worth the 38th overall pick because he's a good run stuffer. That is not worth the production that he's giving you in the pass rush. You have to be a good pass rusher to be taken that high as an interior defensive lineman. And Ran Carthon screwed the pooch and took a guy who should have been drafted in the 4th round at pick number 38. And now I understand, hey, he was drafted. There's nothing the Titans can do about that now. But my point is, you can trade T'Vondre Sweat for a 4th or 5th round pick to a team that he does fit the scheme for and that will value him more than Robert Saleh will. And you can find a replacement. That is the point here. Outside of running back, nose tackle is probably the easiest position in the NFL to find. You can draft somebody on day 3, late in the draft, 5th, 6th round, 7th round. You can get an undrafted free agent. 3 of those guys in the top 10, 3 of the top 10 run-stuffing defensive tackles in the NFL were undrafted free agents. Run-stuffing nose tackles are a dime a dozen. You can find them anywhere. You don't need to take them at 38, and if you can get a 4th or a 5th round pick for T'Vondre Sweat and let Mike Borgonzi have that at his disposal, that if they could trade for a 4th round pick, use that 4th round pick on a cornerback, and then get an interior nose tackle, a run stuffer that is a little smaller, that can penetrate better and fit Robert Saleh's defense better, that is a great trade. And again, T'Vondre Sweat was in trade talks last year. And you get the Jeffrey Simmons thing. Well, he's going to train with Jeffrey Simmons this offseason. Jeff will get him right. Guys, you think that training in Dallas with Jeffrey Simmons for 3 to 5 weeks is going to make T'Vondre Sweat lose 50 pounds and all of a sudden become a totally different player? If Tracy Rocker, one of the best interior defensive lineman coaches in the entire NFL, couldn't change T'Vondre Sweat's mind about how he needs to approach his career, you think that training with Jeffrey Simmons for a couple of weeks in Dallas is going to do that? Oh, he can drop weight. He ain't going from 370, 360 to 310, 320. That's illogical. It's unreasonable. It's insane. And a lot of people like to say, well, T'Vondre Sweat being on the field opens things up for Jeffrey Simmons. He opens things up for Jeffrey Simmons. That's what T'Vondre Sweat was only on the field for 12 of the Tennessee Titans' 42 sacks this year. 30 of the Titans' 42 sacks. T'Vondre Sweat wasn't even on the field. So you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. He doesn't open up anything for Jeffrey Simmons. The Titans were a way better pass rush team when he was off the field because he can't rush the passer. Period. Point blank, period. And again, in Robert Saleh's scheme, he wants quick interior penetrators that shoot gaps. Now, you can find examples of T'Vondre Sweat on tape shooting a gap, but collectively as a whole throughout his 2 years in the NFL, that's not what he's good at. He's good at holding against double teams, standing his ground, being a run-stuffing nose tackle. And that is simply not what the Tennessee Titans are going to be looking for at interior defensive line anymore. And he does have value to a team that does value that. So, with the combination of him having some value, him not fitting the scheme, him not growing as a pass rusher, and I'll say this, which if you're an everydayer, you know, I've had a couple of people in the Nashville area connected to the team that were at training camp, that were at practices, who have told me the Titans weren't that happy with T'Vondre Sweat's offseason last season. They didn't think that he took it serious enough. They didn't think that he showed up in good enough shape. They didn't think that he worked hard enough on his game. Now, I'm not a newsbreaker. I don't do scoops and, all that different stuff, so I'm not out here pumping that out, but I have talked to people who have said, yeah, Mike Borgonzi may not be that high on T'Vondre Sweat and his work ethic. And as they look to build the culture going forward, it's not a Jarvis Brownlee Jr. situation where they're like, we got to get this guy out of here. He's a malcontent in the locker room who's causing problems. He's not that, but he's also not the hardworking, dedicated to football, gonna do whatever it takes to have the best career possible type guy either. He's just not that. Okay? So you can get mad at me all you want. You could say, oh, you didn't like him in the draft. You just hate T'Vondre Sweat. But the proof is in the pudding. I gave you data. I gave you scheme reasons. I gave you tangible evidence that the Titans were looking at potentially trading him last year before the trade deadline. If you can't connect all these dots and see that I'm not just being a T'Vondre Sweat hater, then I don't know what else to tell you. The Titans need something different at interior defensive tackle. He hasn't lived up to the draft pick that he was at. He would still have value with the team that he fits with, and they were already interested in moving him out of this locker room anyway. So I think T'Vondre Sweat is a prime trade candidate as the Titans move to Robert Saleh's scheme. And again, he's not as impactful to the pass rush and Jeffrey Simmons and helping him out as you guys like to say. 30 of the Titans' 42 sacks, he wasn't even on the field. Jeffrey Simmons was much better with Draymond Jones, Jihad Ward, Sebastian Joseph Day. And what do those guys do? They penetrate and rush the passer. So I don't know what else to need to tell you. Cope if you want to cope, but those are the facts. And with that being said, the Titans need to re-examine how they look at edge rushers, but luckily they got a little bit of a head start on that. In the linebacker position, that's going to have to change as well. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're going to back the favorites, whether you're riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game that everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's episode is also brought to you by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor that you actually like can be like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in network, nearby, and has availability, but you also want a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. That's the kind of doctor that exists, and you can find them easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone who you love without the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties from primary care to dentistry, to dermatology, to eye care. I've been looking for an ENT lately, and ZocDoc helped me find the right one fast. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. I made everybody mad at me by being logical and saying that T'Vondre Sweat should be traded, but now that everybody's calmed down off of that, let's move to edge, let's move to linebacker, and we're going to hit the secondary at the end of the show. Remember, I talked about the offensive side of the ball yesterday, about running back changes, tight end changes, offensive line, the backup quarterback. If you missed that, go back and check that out. But edge rusher. Now, the Titans already started making this change last year. Why? Because they were terrible setting the edge and run defense in 2024. So they made the change. They go out, they draft Femi Oladipo. They go get a big-bodied defensive end like Draymond Jones. They're trying to make that change. They signed Lorenzo Carter, who's 6'5", 260 pounds. Now, he ended up retiring, but the point was obvious. They wanted bigger edges to set the run because they play so many four-man fronts. And with Robert Saleh's scheme coming in, that is not going to change. Robert Saleh is somebody who wants big body defensive ends because he plays four-man fronts and he wants guys who can set a physical edge. And here's some realities. I see a lot of people out there talking about David Bailey. And I like David Bailey. I think he's a good prospect. He's going to go top 10 in the NFL draft. I don't think it would be insane for the Titans to take David Bailey at number 4, but I see a lot of people saying, oh, David Bailey is a perfect scheme fit for Robert Saleh's defense. And quite honestly, I don't agree with that. I don't think that that's right. I don't think that David Bailey is a clean fit in Robert Saleh's pass defense. Quite frankly, I think that David Bailey is thin. He's not good against the run, and those are the things that Robert Saleh is looking for. Now, I have been countered with Will McDonald. But Will McDonald is the worst run defender at edge in the entire NFL, and his pass rush production has not justified him being picked 15th in the NFL draft. He had one good year in 2024, and he has been mediocre every other opportunity that he had. I don't think that Robert Saleh would take Will McDonald again. You could look at a guy like Jermaine Johnson, but Jermaine Johnson is a thicker build than David Bailey, and he's a little bit heavier as well. David Bailey is listed at like 245. Let's be honest. He looks like he's 230, 235 out there. And we know that all of these colleges lie about what people weigh. Until he gets to the combine, we can't know anything. And if I'm David Bailey's agent, I'm going to bulk him up as much as I can for the NFL combine and put him at a weight where he's not actually going to play at. Okay? Look at what's happened recently. San Francisco's defense. Last year, Robert Saleh was in San Francisco and they drafted Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams is 6'5", 260 pounds with long arms. Nick Bosa, 6'4", 266 pounds. Yetur Gross-Matos was a rotational end for San Francisco, 6'5", 265 pounds. Sam Okwe-Anonu, who also was a rotational end for San Francisco, 6'1", but 260 pounds. Clelin Ferrell, 6'5", 265. Keon White, 290, 6'5". Like, David Bailey is not a clean fit. Ruben Bain is way more of a clean fit for Robert Saleh's defense. He's 6'3", doesn't have the longest arms, I admit, but he's 265, 270. Some people say maybe even 280 pounds. Robert Saleh plays a ton of four-man fronts. He plays a ton of nickel where there are 5 defensive backs out there. In his scheme, just like we saw Denard Wilson go to last year because of the edge setting problems in 2024, you need big-bodied, physical edge rushers that can set that edge properly and force the running back inside. That's not David Bailey. And quite frankly, David Bailey being a pass rush specialist, he's got great get-off the line of scrimmage. He's very good with his hands. He's a good prospect. But he's got zero flexibility in his ankles. I call him the Tin Man. He's so stiff and rigid, has no bend, has no flexion in his ankles. He's like the opposite of a Harold Landry, who had great bend, and I got it from Coach Mack. He's got that motorcycle bend to him. Ruben Bain is 280 pounds. He might be 40 to 50 pounds heavier than David Bailey, and he's got more bend and more wiggle than David Bailey does. So I see people saying that David Bailey is a clean fit for Robert Saleh's scheme, and I'm sorry, the only example that you have to really tell you that is Will McDonald, and I don't think that Robert Saleh would draft Will McDonald again. If he, just like I told you, they drafted CJ West and Alfred Collins, and those guys were terrible in Robert Saleh's scheme. He wouldn't do that again. So I'm not saying David Bailey won't be the pick. If Arvell Reese, if Reuben Bain are off the board and the Titans really want to go edge rusher and they go with David Bailey, I'm not going to be shocked. He's going to be in my happy tier of options at number 4. I get it. I'm not going to be angry about David Bailey. But to act like he's such a clean, obvious fit in Robert Saleh's scheme, I simply don't buy that. I don't. And I think that there are pass rushers, like a Trey Hendrickson, for example. I'd rather give Trey Hendrickson a 2-year deal worth $30 million a year with $50 million guaranteed to be a big physical edge rusher who had 17 and a half sacks in back-to-back seasons just 2 years ago. I'd rather do that than draft David Bailey at 4. So that's why David Bailey is my edge 3. I admit Arvell Reese isn't huge. He's kind of a similar size, but he's just much more of a physical player. And he's only 20 years old right now. He's going to grow and get stronger. To me, the conversation between Arvell Reese and David Bailey is just super different. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, speaking of Arvell Reese, who has edge and linebacker versatility, we move to linebacker. And I think that a guy like Cody Barton is a great example of a guy who does not fit Robert Saleh's scheme. Cody Barton is not a downhill attacker at linebacker, and that's what Robert Saleh wants. And it makes sense, okay? When you have big-bodied nose tackles like a T'Vondre Sweat, they can eat up 2 offensive linemen at once, which keeps a guy like Cody Barton clean so he doesn't have to downhill attack. He doesn't have to get off blocks from offensive linemen. He should be kept clean by T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. But in Robert Saleh's defensive scheme, where the defensive linemen are meant to penetrate, not just hold up, the linebackers have to be better at shedding blocks. They have to be more aggressive at darting downhill and avoiding defensive linemen, or avoiding offensive linemen climbing up to the second level. Cedric Gray fits perfect. I think James Williams will fit perfect. I'm high on James Williams bouncing back this year under Robert Saleh, but a guy like Cody Barton doesn't make sense. He doesn't. That is what I mean when doesn't fit the scheme. Barton is a guy who needs to be kept clean so that he can use, his safety background to fly to the ball and wrap up. But he's not getting downhill. He's not attacking the line of scrimmage with reckless abandon and fierce intensity. That's not who Cody Barton is. And that's what Robert Saleh wants in his linebackers. Athletes who are physical and get downhill and can slide under an offensive lineman and make a tackle, shoot a gap and make a tackle. That's not Cody Barton. That is Cedric Gray, but that's not Cody Barton. So I think that's what you want to look for when you're looking at linebacker. And then also worth noting, because Robert Saleh does have a 4-3 base defense, he will have something the Titans haven't used in a long time, which is a Sam linebacker. And a Sam linebacker is basically more like a 3-4 outside linebacker. And I think Femi Oladejo fits that perfectly. He's got the versatility to drop in coverage, but he can also be on the edge of the line of scrimmage and attack a tight end or an offensive tackle. So I think that Femi has some versatility to maybe be a weak side defensive end, but also be a Sam linebacker. I think Femi could kind of play all of those edge spots, but I think at Sam, and look, if the Titans draft Arvell Reese, they could start him out as a Sam linebacker where he could still play on the edge, have Femi Oladejo be the strong side edge, and I think they're in a great spot. So those are just things to consider when we're looking at the scheme for Robert Saleh and how that'll change what they're looking for when they go to build the roster. But with that being said, we do got to talk about the secondary, because I think specifically at cornerback, the Titans are going to be looking to make some changes there as well. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looks good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post right at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Today's episode is also brought to you by Quo. That's right, new year, new systems. And this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of our business and think, there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades that you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo is. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to Quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Quo.com/LockedOnNFL. It's Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down what I think will change in terms of what the Titans are looking for on the roster. We did offense yesterday, doing defense today. We've done interior defensive line, edge, linebacker. Now we need to move to the secondary. Before we do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Speaking of every day, you guys got to join the Locked On Titans Everydayer Club. You can hit the link down below in the description or go to lockedontitans.supercast.com. You're going to get ad-free versions of the podcast right in your podcast app. You're going to be able to join a Locked On Titans group chat on Discord where we're always talking about everything. I'm going to be doing a mailbag on tomorrow's show, and I'm getting all my mailbag questions from the Locked On Titans group chat. So make sure that you jump in there if you want your question read on the air. But now we do need to talk about the cornerback position, because in Robert Saleh's zone-based defense, where there's a ton of cover 4 and a ton of cover 3, you need long cornerbacks that can handle their own on the boundary. And I honestly don't think that it's much different than what Denard Wilson was looking for in terms of the mentality of the cornerback. You want somebody who's feisty, who's willing to be on the line of scrimmage and press. I will say this, L'Jarius Sneed would be a perfect fit for Robert Saleh's defense. The problem is L'Jarius Sneed is always injured. He's a bum, and they're going to get rid of him. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that the Titans need to keep L'Jarius Sneed, but I'm saying the type of player that L'Jarius Sneed is, that is what Robert Saleh is looking for. Robert Saleh doesn't run a ton of man coverage. Okay, he runs cover 3 and he runs cover 4. He'll mix in some cover 2. He'll mix in some cover 1 man. I'm not saying that he never runs those, but for the most part, it's cover 3 and it's cover 4. And you need cornerbacks. Think about Richard Sherman, who was a big, long, physical corner that would just man the sideline. Because in cover 4, the outside cornerbacks basically have the sideline. You're playing outside quarter. In cover 3, the outside cornerbacks basically have the outside boundary. They have that outside third. So you need cornerbacks that are good in isolation, that can press at the line of scrimmage, then drop back into a zone, and when they inevitably get challenged one-on-one, because it's not like cover 2, where you have deep safety help behind you, or cover 2 man where you're playing man coverage, but you can play underneath because you know you have a safety behind you. It's not like that. You are on an island in cover 4 and cover 3 on the outsides. So you have to have outside cornerbacks that have the length to win those situations. Why couldn't Roger McCreary play on the outside? Why can't Marcus Harris play on the outside? Because they don't have the length. So in contested situations against bigger wide receivers, they are going to lose because they simply don't have the length to compete out there. Doesn't mean that they're bad cornerbacks. It just means that they can't play out there. Okay? It's that simple. So, you need long cornerbacks that will get in your face and they can drop back into coverage and can win in contested combat situations. And I've talked about a guy like Tyreek Woolen, a guy like Alontae Taylor, my top options at cornerback in free agency. And they show you exactly, think about a guy like Colton Hood in the draft. Think about a guy like Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. You know, these are guys who I think fit the mold of what the Titans are. And I'm not saying that the Titans are going to get any of these players. I'm just giving you high-level examples in free agency and in the draft of what I think actually fits. And as we get closer to free agency, when I do my full free agency preview for every single position, we'll talk about the guys who actually do fit that mold. But again, cornerback, I think, like with edge, not going to be that much different with what the Titans are looking for. Just a guy like Jarvis Brownlee Jr., too small to play outside for Robert Saleh. That's an example of a pick that I don't think the Titans would make. They need longer guys outside who can win those contested catch situations. But the same feistiness, the same ability to press at the line of scrimmage and drop into zone, that is similar. But they just need more length so that they have more faith in the guy to win contested and combat catches. Okay? But moving to safety, I don't think that safety has to change all that much either. All right, with Denard Wilson, the Titans are in a ton of match coverages. Cover 3, cover 4, cover 6. Robert Saleh doesn't run as much cover 6, but with cover 3 and cover 4, when you have, this safety back deep and this safety is back deep and then he's rolling up into a buzz coverage for a hook curl over the middle of the field, when you're running cover 4 and you need guys that can play inside quarters and then match against crossing routes, you don't need, an Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor type, where one guy is a box safety and one guy is the deep free safety. That can't work because the defense is too multiple. You need guys who are more versatile at safety. Both of them can play back deep. Both of them can come down in the box. Both of them can man up against a crossing route coming across the field when inevitably quarters match turns into that match coverage. You need versatile safeties. Now, what I will say as well, with Robert Saleh's defense, there's a ton of big nickel, which is 3 safeties on the field. And again, Denard Wilson did that quite a lot too. So for the nickel spot, I think that Kevin Winston, this is why I'm against Caleb Downs. The Titans are not drafting Caleb Downs at number 4. They're not. Because him and Kevin Winston are both going to be best suited as nickel cornerbacks in the big nickel package early on and early downs, as dime linebackers who cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield and can blitz and play against the run. Caleb Downs is a great player. I think that Kevin Winston could be just as good as him. Call it a hot take. I don't care. I believe it. Kevin Winston would have been a first-round pick if he didn't blow out his ACL 2 games into his final year at Penn State. He was going to be a first-round pick. Nick Saban said that. And I believe it. Kevin Winston is 6'2", long arms, 4.3 speed, physical, doesn't miss tackles. He is literally one of the best run defense safeties in the entire NFL already as a rookie, who had a terrible offseason and training camp ramp up where he was hurt. Kevin Winston is a dog, folks. So, yeah, Caleb Downs is a good player, but they're too similar for the Titans to get maximum value out of both of them. It just won't work. And if it does work, and it can work because they're both good, again, you're not going to get maximum value from those guys if you have both of them at the same time, because if Kevin Winston's playing nickel, Caleb Downs would be better at doing that than he is whatever else he's doing. If you have Kevin Winston back deep playing free safety, and you have Caleb Downs playing the big nickel spot, Kevin Winston would be better at the big nickel spot, so you're not getting max value out of him. So with safety, they need versatile guys, but I just think that Downs and Winston are way too similar to extract full value, which means I don't think it's possible. Now, if the Titans trade down to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, if they trade down somewhere in there and Caleb Downs is available, then at that point we can't pass up on the talent. But at number 4, no, I don't think so. And a guy to keep your mind on in free agency is Jason Pinnock. Pinnock isn't a great player. He's not a certified starting level player or anything like that, but he's a really good depth player who's played all of the safety spots in Robert Saleh's defense. So if you have Amani Hooker and Jason Pinnock playing versatile safety back deep, and then Kevin Winston playing your big nickel safety at the line of scrimmage or dime linebacker, that's the best way to set things up. So that's my thoughts on the defense. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I'm sure you guys are already down in the comments mad at me because I want to trade T'Vondre Sweat. But I'm sorry, once you remove the emotion of the situation, the logic is incredibly sound. There's no way around it. But with that being said, remember, mailbag edition tomorrow, Locked On Titans group chat. Make sure that you get in there, join. It's $5 a day to be in the Locked On Titans Everydayer Club. It's the cost of a cup of coffee, and I give you free content Monday through Friday all year round. Okay, I don't think it's too big of an ask. But my folks who are already in the Locked On Titans group chat, get those questions to me. I'll be pinning them and keep them tracked. And if you aren't in, it's time to get in. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.